Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mystery, Marvelous, Magical, Magnificent Monday with our beautiful Brice from Esoteric Atlanta, who I think you've been part of our channel for so long now. It's been at least 18 months, right? And I can't actually imagine not having you around on this channel. So just don't get any ideas of running off anywhere anytime soon, because I will fetch you. You know?
No, I feel like I've known you guys my whole life. That's the beautiful thing about this time. And there's a lot of shitty things about this timeline we're in, but that is the beautiful thing about this timeline we're in, is I think we're all, didn't know each other for a really long time, and then we came together at this time. So absolutely, I love being here. You guys are family. So
it's so beautiful to have you. So we are on our emerald tablets. The third emerald tablet, number 6.
Yeah, the never-ending story of the third tablet.
God telling us how not to be an author, telling us how not to be an asshole. So
that's what I was saying. Yeah, that's why this one's taking so long, because it's literally, they call it, in more eloquent terms, they call it the key of wisdom, but we're saying it's literally just him saying, like, listen, just don't be an asshole. This is how you not be. And I have to say, I know I was away last week because I was in Florida, and I went and got my hair cut in Florida, and I used Shanti because I always love how her hair moves. And so the lady in Florida who cut my hair, I was like, I have a friend in South Africa. I want my hair cut like hers because her hair always moves. And so you are my inspiration. You would have loved it. Shanti, I know you would have loved it, because you talk about the movie and the play Still Magnolias, which takes place in the South, and all these ladies are at the hair salon.
I love it. Favorite movie.
This salon was identical to that salon. I was like, not only am I channeling Shanti right now for my haircut, but she would love this place, because everyone was in one big conversation. It was, it's a lot of Florida is a lot like the South. It was like, you want to know the latest. I mean, literally, if you're a detective and you have a murder to solve, just go to the local hair salon. They know all the gossip. They know everything.
Exactly, you'll get to know everything there. Oh, that's wonderful. Absolutely. That movie was absolutely amazing. I love it. I mean, the southern accents, and the one that's talking about her ass looking like 2 pigs fighting under a blanket.
One of my favorite lines is, I'm not mean. I've just been in a really bad mood for 40 years.
Okay, I know what I'm watching tonight before I go to bed. I hope it's still on Netflix, because I'm definitely getting that.
I've just been in a really bad mood for 40 years. That's the South for you. So I had to put that out there, that I missed you guys last week in Florida. I know it's been a couple of weeks since we did the Emerald Tablets, because the week before that we did the children's strike of 1899, and I just have to say, I'm getting so many positive responses from that story. And I keep sending me more. People are sending me more stories of kids doing really incredible things at that time. So those are our ancestors. So they those chain smoking, cocaine using 8-year-olds. Those are our ancestors. So.
I want to know about my granddaddy. Except I don't have any recent ancestors that been in America. That's the thing. Mine all from Germany and England.
Well, they were everywhere apparently doing this stuff, and they were they were naming themselves Workhorse Higgins, like Bob the Indian. Like this is fantastic.
What was my favorite one? Come on, what was his name? My favorite
Bob
one,
the Indian, or Blink Kid. Blink Kid was one of them.
Yes,
Workhorse Higgins. I have the list somewhere of all, but Hungry Horse Higgins, I think, was one. Like, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So, I'm so happy you guys resonated with that story. I'm sure there's way more to it. And instead of seeing this as everything's about perspective, and we could say, oh man, it really sucks that the controllers did this to us, or we can say, whoa, we fought back, and we continue to fight back. And if 8-year-olds can take down Joseph Pulitzer and William Hearst, a bunch of 40, 50, 60, 7-year-olds can too. So,
absolutely.
you know, so thank you guys for reaching out about that.
Yeah, I think we could certainly be learning from the kids. That's for sure.
For sure.
They just weren't going to be taking none of this nonsense. That's for sure.
Well, and that's kind of the thing too. Like kids won't back down. Like adults get jaded and tired and just kind of start submitting. Kids don't do that.
Exactly. But you know what was interesting? Just going back to that show, an interesting question popped up on the comments of the show. And someone said, who took care of these kids from 0 to 8, let's say, you know, they 8 to 12 or whatever on the streets. Where were they before that? And that was actually an interesting question because I hadn't actually thought about that.
I think they took care of themselves, honestly. Like from what I got from my perspective, from my research, is at a certain age they were thrown out on the, like, you know, if they were created by the cabal at a certain age, they were kind of just thrown out on the streets or thrown into a workhouse. And, you know, if you think back to when am I frozen or are you guys frozen?
No.
No. Okay. I was like,
we're staring at you.
You don't want us talking about this. If you think about your childhood, like I think my earliest memories are probably 3 years old. Like I remember my mom being pregnant with my sister because I remember she couldn't pick me up because she was pregnant. And so you think about, you just kind of go and do what you're told to do. And I know the kids were like sent into, at a very young age, they were sent into factories. It's funny. I know that I actually forgot to tell you guys this before we started filming, so I apologize. But I had put the Broadway play up link for people because the Broadway play is way better than the movie, and I think there's more information in the play. And I know you guys have a hard time getting that in South Africa. So what I did is I recorded some of the scenes I'll send it to you guys for your SunKidz. And some of the lyrics, they talk about how the city wouldn't run without them. So I think in my head, what was happening is they were creating these kids in these factories. And then by the time memory kind of started for them, I think they were putting them into these workhouses and into the streets. And then they were kind of taught to do certain jobs. And then the city was run off of this labor, and they were just kind of trained to do this. You know, you think about us now at, you know, preschool age. So even before kindergarten, like when I was a kid, school started at kindergarten. Now school starts at like preschool, even before kindergarten. So you think about these kids that are going into daycare at a very early age. There's a whole system in place. And I think a lot of I don't know if they all were, but probably some of the factory owners kind of knew what was going on and kind of helped indoctrinate the kids to just work. Honestly, out of all the jobs the kids were doing at that time, I would have preferred being a newsie because at least those kids got to run around outside. You know, a lot of the girls were in the sweat houses, were in the seamstress slaughterhouses. So that is my, and I think that's why the kids, we also have to remember that 2023 and 1899, even though they're not that far apart in the whole grand scheme of history, it was a very different time. And as we saw those pictures from those kids, I mean, they were chain smoking at 8 years old, you know, doing cocaine at 8 years old.
I would be interested to know as well. We know that, let's call it child transportation, has been going on for a very long time. Although it's very difficult, I know that in our research over the years, it's very difficult to even try and understand when the dumb tunnels were put in, who put them in. We can never get a clear answer, or I haven't gotten a clear answer on that. So for me, when it comes to child trafficking, stuff like that, very, very obviously something that we expose, right?
Yeah.
So, but what is interesting is that it makes sense that these kids would have maybe just belonged there, and like a bit like feral cats nowadays, you know?
Yeah,
there.
Absolutely.
And they just, you know, suddenly there was a 1-year-old that was just dumped onto
showed up.
Who took care of them type thing. But it makes me wonder, because when you're talking like to a lot of our survivors who have been the forced adoptees, right? Okay, it wasn't going back to the turn of the century now, but it's going back to 40s, 50s maybe. 1940, 1950. I mean, there's a system in place where these kids are trafficked.
Yeah.
They are graded according to their physical well-being. I mean, Kerry Saint, I've spoken about it before. She's one of these. She had a club foot, so she was B grade. She was sold to a Freemason family, and she worked in the charcoal pits, and she was sex trafficked. You know, so it makes me wonder as well about these street kids when it comes to that.
Yeah, well, let's think about Hitler's youth. I mean, from what we know, I mean, I don't know at this point, I scratch my head about any history we're given, but we were taught in school, let's just use this as an example, that they would take Aryan women like myself that had the physical features, the blonde hair, the blue eyes, and force them to basically breed with other Aryan men, to breed a specific genetic. And if you look at the guide stones, which is one of the first episodes I ever did with you guys, and those guide stones are now no longer here, but it talked about this on the guide stones about maintaining nature and almost like structuring nature. So in my opinion, these controllers have had the ability to do this for a very long time. And so I think that they were taking specific DNA traits from the leftover Atlanteans to create humans that they thought could be, because we do have inherited karma. We do have karma from our family. Like, you know, usually if one of the parents is athletic, a kid's going to be athletic, you know, that's obviously right. And so I think that they were playing the genetic lottery, trying to create, and they would have a kid at a certain age. You can kind of tell. I know with my nieces and nephew, my niece from a very young age, from the time she started walking, she could dance. Like, she found the rhythm of music really easily. And at this point at 8, she's super athletic. She does gymnastics. So you can kind of tell from a very young age the trajectory of someone. So if you have a kid in diapers who is showing traits of athleticism or a certain ability physically, I'm sure that told them which sweat house to put that child in to get the most work done by the child. And so they were brazen. I do think if you look at when I was a child, like my favorite movie was Oliver, the 1968 Oliver, which is based on Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist. It's the same story with Fagin's boys in London, where these boys, these street kids, lived together. They were pickpockets. And this woman, Nancy Sykes, was a prostitute who took care of them. But they also took care of each other. And those pictures, I mean, they're kind of sad pictures, but they're also kind of sweet pictures we showed of all the kids, like puppies, when they play puppy pile, like a litter of puppies will sleep on top of each other in puppy pile. Well, the kids were doing the same thing. They were puppy piling on top of each other. And so, and you see that in the movie Newsies as well as the Broadway play, this camaraderie that these kids had. And they had to have. I mean, I don't think that they're lying about that, because to get a bunch of 25,000 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old kids to strike, there had to be that camaraderie between each other, you know. And they were, the Newsies started it, but then they were fighting also for the little girls in the sweatshops that were working under dangerous conditions. They had some understanding of fairness. And again, I think that comes from the spirit of God, which is something the cabal cannot create. They can mess around with our DNA all they want. They have been messing with our DNA all this time, but they cannot mess with the spirit of God, which is why I believe after that crisis happened for them, not for us, in 1899, where they went, oh shit, these kids are fighting back. I think that's when the Federal Reserve started to come into play, because then if they can't control us genetically, they were going to try to control us mentally, because if you can control the mind, then you can leave the spirit off. So yeah. But that was a good question. I do, and we don't have all the answers, guys. I don't, a lot of this is just speculation off of our research, critical thinking skills from our research. But I'm sure, hopefully, one day we will have all the answers. Hopefully, in our lifetime, we'll have all the answers as to what was going on. And I think too, for us, back to that question. What was that?
Sorry. I wanted to just say that I think as well, what's amazing is that talking about the stuff immediately, gets everyone thinking about it as well. So if you guys have any information on that, and you can email myself or Brice, that would be amazing, just to figure out, where did these kids come from? Who raised them?
Just the fact that somebody asked who raised these kids shows that that person has a level of empathy and compassion and love in their heart for a child, because that was a concern, like who was raising these kids. The cabal doesn't give a shit, right? They don't care if little Blink kid or Bob the Indian is being tucked in at night. They don't care if, you know, Workhorse Higgins is getting a warm glass of milk and a bedtime cuddle. You know, that's something we do because we have love and compassion for people. We understand that nurturing side, but the cabal doesn't have that. So, you know, so just the mere fact that someone's asking that shows how different we are from the controllers.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
Yay. Well, we went off on a little bit of a sidetrack there, which we didn't intend to, but as you know, on this channel, expect unexpected. We are Aquarians here. And for those of you
Matas can talk.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about the Emerald Tablet.
Speaking of the Spark of God, so we stopped last time we did this. We stopped at Tablet 3, verse 22. So speaking of the street kids, this is called this translation is contact freedom from the bondage of strife. And again, guys, just so you're aware, I know I had this comment a couple of times on my channel. Once again, we're starting today off at verse 22. So if you're following along, we've already covered the 21 verses before this. So don't get confused. Like if you're reading just pop down to verse 22. And again, for Tablet 3, I'm using Rebecca Marina Messenger's copy. The rest of our stuff has been done by Doriel, which we'll go back to his, but I really like her. She has just a total copy from the third tablet. So we're just going to continue with hers. So the original verse 22 is, into men's heart I look for my wisdom, found them not free from the bondage of strife, free from the toils thy fire, O my brother, least it be buried in the shadow of night. So this is Thoth's commentary in modern English. I have looked into the hearts of men and sadly have seen that they still hold on to a mindset of bondage and enslavement. We know this. I mean, that's Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, right? Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. That's what the yoga is about, is the mind stuff, that the mind is speaking of the Federal Reserve and controlling the educational system. If you can change the mind, you can change the experience. So he's saying he's looking into men's heart, but there's like a disconnect from the hearts of men and the mindsets, right? It is recognition of the power of the fire burning within that will cause permanent change in this belief. Well, that makes sense because a lot of us in this quote unquote great awakening felt a fire in our soul, a stirring in our gut that was like, something's not right. And that has had a permanent change in our beliefs, right? They say once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? The fire within represents the power of divinity that humanity possesses. So this is that spark of life that we were talking about with the street kids.
I love that. It's like Rumi. It's the quote that Rumi says, every person has a sun within them, so the sun is the soul. So the minute that whole, and also with the work we do, with the 4 legs of the table, so to speak, the first leg is the spiritual leg, which is the element of fire. So it's like when you spark, you wake up, you reconnect back to spirit. You remember where you come from. It's that moment of that nanosecond of
clarity.
And that, yes, and that moment, and you might go in and out of it for a while. That's normal. But the whole thing is then just to sort of bring yourself into that space, right? Because it's as you say, it's in that moment of truth. And from that, you grow. And that's where it's like striking the match.
Yeah.
And with a match, you light the fire, which then catches the other logs alight. So it's that moment of truth. And so many people say, yes, but the feeling goes away. Of course it goes away. It's like a little bit of a crack in your energy field, so to speak. It's up to you then to keep recultivating it, keep stoking that fire, keep doing the things that you know are good. Repetition is magic. Keep breathing, keep doing your yoga, keep doing your cold showers, keep doing your spiritual practice, keep doing your exercise, whatever it is. Even if today you wake up and you feel like absolute shit, like nothing can move this horrific situation, just keep doing what you do. And that's stoking that fire. Just keep that flame burning, really.
So in Sanskrit, there's a term, it's called prativa. And prativa, that's called a flash. It's a flash of illumination. And so if you are someone that goes, well, it comes and it goes, well, it's supposed to come and go. It's a flash of illumination. Because then you have to be the one to go, okay, something's not right. I feel it within my soul. I need to explore this. No one's going to like give you the answers, right? Because thoughts already talked about this. You already have the answers. So no one can give you the answers, right? So it's just coaxing you. And that's, we talk about Agni or fire a lot in spiritual practices. If we look at the very literal about the changes of tapas, which is in the Yoga Sutras, part of the yamas and niyamas, is the idea of tapas, which is heat. And even on a very physical, if we look at the body being the expression of the soul, physically, we have sweat. We have this moving of energy, this rerouting of pattern work that's coming from something that's inside of you. Like for me, I'm not a fan of hot yoga because it's faking it, right? You want to feel that burn coming out from you, right? And that's what he's talking about here. And isn't that interesting how all these different spiritual practices from all around the world all describe the essence of a person, the being of a person, as fire. Even in the Bible, even Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, it said, then God said, there be light. The original Hebrew word for light meant divine spark. Not divine cloud, not divine smoke, not divine water. It was divine spark, because fire can cleanse and change everything. So that is within you. And that is honestly, so what we were talking about before with the child strike of 1899, that's what we're talking about, is these little freaking punk thug 8-year-olds had that was that fire, that they were like chasing after the wagons to turn over the wagons of newspaper. Like that was that fire that they had. And that was something the cabal, the controllers, that the controllers can't control that. They can't. No, they can't. That's what they were. And they're terrified. They're terrified of this because they know that we possess it. But if we don't know we possess it, then we're docile. But we do possess it. And so that's such good news, right?
It's exactly what people say. You will hear people say, especially people get sick or if they're in an abusive relationship, their light got dim before they got murdered or before they committed murder. I will often hear people say their light got dim. And I think that's something very important to recognize, because it's that divine spark within. It can never, ever go away. What happens is that our fears, our pains, our suffering clouded. It's like putting layers of cloth, dirty cloth around a globe, right? So, and then soon there is no light because the pain and the suffering and the drama, whatever it is. But as we then start doing self-actualization, self-realization, understanding and remembering and reclaiming that the divine spark is in me, I am it. It works. I am part of that, a co-creator with God, the divine, right? And then that mindset, that memory, even though you might not feel it yet, just the memory of who you are starts creating that momentum. And it's a beautiful thing. It becomes easier. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Repetition is magic.
It's like, and I know a lot of people watching right now, most people have seen a dead body, whether that be like in a casket, an open casket. And most of my family has always done closed casket for the mere idea that when a body is without the human, the being in it, it doesn't look like the person, right? It doesn't look like your grandma or your grandpa because they are gone. It is, and that is such. So people watching, like, to understand that you alive right now are a combination really of two things, and that's nature and soul, right? But once the nature dies and the soul leaves, then the nature doesn't, you see how much this divine spark actually shines through the body. Does that make sense? Like, while we were watching a night of the, I relax by watching true crime. So I know that might sound really screwed up, but I love me some Datelines. And I'm going to tell you guys watching right now, I have a file on my laptop of approved photos. So if something happens to me and they do a Dateline 2020 true crime, if something, only use some of these photos people use. I'm like, who approved this photo? This is a terrible photo. So I have a file of photos to be used on Dateline if I get murdered. So, so just a little comedy of that. So I'm like, who approved these pictures to go on this TV show of this dead person because it's not their best picture, So, I'm also going to say
that'll be your job. That'll be your job if anything happens to me. Morné has the file of approved.
Make sure it's like the Facebook friendly.
And I will know what photos to use.
Just make sure. I'll be like, who's approving these? And I'm also, so anyway, I was watching. Also, make sure your house is always clean, because if you get murdered in your house and they take footage of your house and it ends up on Dateline, you don't want your messy house being shown on Dateline. So just make sure your house always stays clean in case you get murdered. So it always is clean. I mean, I look at these houses in true crime and I'm like, this was really messy. Like last night I was saying, just make sure your house is always clean. So if you get murdered, it's clean on Dateline. It's clean on 2020. So, but anyway, back to the dead body. I was watching this true crime. The guy was hiking and he stumbled across this body of this woman that had been missing, and he immediately called 911. And I was like, how, to the person watching it with me, I was like, how did he know she was dead? I would have thought maybe she was just sleeping. And the person watching it with me was like, because when a body is dead, like there's just no life to it. And I was like, oh, good point. Because like I said, my family always closed the caskets at burials because, listen, everyone in my family dies of cancer. So the body's ravaged anyway. But so they just close the casket so no one can see the body. And so if you think about that, that's that if somebody hiking up a trail sees a body and knows instantaneously it's dead, like that's how powerful the soul is, right? That's how powerful. But once again, make sure your house is clean so people don't remember you for your messy house, but remember you for your powerful soul. So, and always wear clean underwear in case you get murdered. So that the EMTs can see you at least have clean underwear on. All right. So he goes on to say the fire within represents the power of divinity that humanity possesses. Acknowledging this power will bring one into a place of releasing the old chains of enslavement. So that's literally what we've been talking about. This prativa, this flash of illumination, this stirring in the soul, this
exactly.
This is what changed. You think of a compost pile. You have to burn away stuff in order to create the new, right? The new patterns. Man is not meant to toil so savagely. He says that with an exclamation point. There's not a lot of exclamation points in this. So obviously Thoth was very sassy about this. Man is not meant to toil so savagely. There is a better way. There is a better way. And I want to make this clear because I do believe as human beings that we are meant to work, but I don't think we are meant to work in the way the controllers have taught us to work. I think we're meant to work with our dharma. Like what the three of us do off of YouTube and on YouTube. Like, even though it is work, it is labor intensive, there's a passion there. That fire is there. And I love teaching yoga. I love helping people. Trust me, I think we can all three. I was saying this with our friend Emmy. I was like, we're not doing this to be millionaires. Not many millionaire yoga teachers out there, right? We're doing this because there's a passion there. We can't not do it. And so I think that's what Thoth is pointing out too, is this idea of an enslavement in our mind. And we think about that with things like taxes even. Now, I'm not giving financial advice at all, but I know here in America, my friend Emmy is actually figuring out how to do this, where if you claim yourself as a nationalist and not a citizen, then you don't have to pay taxes. And it says that taxes are voluntarily given to the people, but then the IRS will go after you. But if it's so there's all this mind stuff. And if we just, that bondage, and we look at the kids strike, all these strikes, if the kids had said, well, ho hum, we'll just pay the 60 cents and keep working, it would have worked. But they actually said no with the mind stuff saying, oh, are you going to eat today? They said no, and they changed it, right? And so that's we have to understand how much our mind plays into our enslavement, right? They mind controlled us. They've tricked us. They've gotten, and I know this channel talks a lot about that. For us to, if we literally just said, hold on a second, no, so much would change, because we're literally keeping our, it's the prison. I've been watching a lot on Scientology, which is something I really want to cover, because there is a lot that L. Ron Hubbard did take from legitimate teachings, and then he manipulated it. And Scientology, of course.
I agree. I have to say I agree with that.
Oh my
As
God.
with everything, all of these things, you know, Scientology as well, it's so subtle, you know, and the manipulation. Yeah, it's so subtle. But there's a lot of stuff that they work with, and then they'll
There has to be. I mean, all the Dianetic stuff, the stuff that he originally started teaching, comes from like the idea of the reactive mind. That comes from like the Vedic text, the Upanishad. He didn't create that. That comes from actual. But that's what a lot of cult leaders will do. Again, the darkness can't create anything. It can only steal from the light and invert it. But if you listen to ex-Scientologists, they tell you, because that cult is so controlling, that when they got to the point that they wanted to leave, they very easily could have just walked out the door, but they were in the prison of their own mind. And they use that term a lot. And so that's something that's interesting to think about, and something I'm going to be thinking about myself in my own life. Like, where am I enslaved to myself? Like, where in my life are there still places where I am enslaved to my own thoughts? That actually doesn't matter. Like, there's no, you know, and so where can I make that change into more freedom? You know, and where did these, and this is where a lot of good therapists or good healers will help you kind of pull it back and figure out where this original enslavement came from in the mind, because the mind is the most powerful thing. You know, he goes on to say it all begins with realizing your value, and he writes value here in all caps, so that's important, as a divine being filled with the holy fire. If man never seeks to use this forgotten power, he will surely be buried in the dark energies of ceaseless toil. So like you were saying, Shanti, with our own shit, we dim our own light. And nobody can shine your light for you. Like you, it's that whole saying, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. This is that you have a privilege of being able to work through this in this light to find your light, to find in this life to find your light again. And that's one thing they said previously, is like the darkness does have some value, because without the darkness we would not understand the light, right? If everything was just light, which is where we come from. And it's like we were talking about before we signed on, Shanti, when we were working on the template for the 60-day shadow work challenge. We came here in a sense to experience separateness, because we aren't separate, but we had to experience separateness to understand
the illusion of separation.
Yes. And that darkness is what helps us to realize our own light, that polarity. And so there is value with that, so that you understand that you have that power. You know, you're never going to know how strong you are until you're forced to be strong. Right? So sometimes when things happen to us in life that we see are just awful and terrible, and I'm not trying to negate that. I know things are hard, but if we're not in a situation where we're forced to see how strong we are, we don't know how strong we are, you know, and that's so beautiful of an experience when you can look back on that and say, wow, I really grew through this hard, yucky stuff. My light really started to shine because I had no choice but to either succumb or grow. And so I think that's really cool what he's saying. Now, Shishat, his wife, says, my beloved Thoth has always sought to be a teacher and a servant of mankind. Listen, nobody's ever called me beloved. I think I want someone to call me beloved. My beloved Thoth, my beloved, has always sought to be a teacher and servant of mankind. Despite Thoth sharing so much wisdom, there is still a pattern of enslavement and bondage to authority figures among much of humanity. Still, humans do not recognize that they are royalty. They are product of the stars.
Yeah, exactly.
Now at this time, mankind is waking up as never before. Pay attention to the fire within your heart and follow where it leads. Recognize your own divinity. It is the best antidote to enslavement. I'll reiterate that again. It's the best antidote to it's like you are divinity, you are royalty, you are star royalty. We are
exactly.
enslaved.
The whole thing is to recognize your divinity. When you recognize your divinity, that melts the chains of slavery.
Yes.
In your mind, in your emotions, in your experiences, you become a lot more free. And having said that, it doesn't mean that poof, tomorrow you suddenly own 3 jumbo jets. No, it means that you're now free to explore a different avenue for yourself, to create a new pathway for yourself, to think differently. Doesn't mean that suddenly, poof, you're now living on Venus or something. No, not like that at all.
I would love to be living on Venus right now. Again, you guys know they only have like 4 fingers, no thumbs. I mean, I still can't figure that. Like, how does this work? I'm very fascinated by this, by Venus. So, and apparently they just bang all day. They just boink each other all day. I'm like, how does that work? Anyway, all right.
Much of a good thing is bad. Let's face that. So maybe they're still learning. Maybe they're still learning about that on Venus. So now I'm happy to be
each other, boinking too many people.
Well, there are definitely some Venusians around. That's for sure.
I hope they know about sharing karma. All right. So I guess if you don't have thumbs, what else are you going to do all day but boink? So, I mean, what else can you do? Yeah. Our thumbs are really important. I mean, you guys think about that. Our thumbs, but apparently our thumbs are what made us fall into darkness, is because our thumbs helped us do more things and get into more mischief. So I don't know, though. I don't know what life is like without thumbs. So anyway, verse 23, create through invisible light. So the original translation, hark ye, O man, and list to this wisdom. Where do name and form cease? Only in consciousness, invisible, and infinite force of radiant bright. The forms that ye create by brightening thy light are truly effects that follow thy cause. So in modern commentary, Thoth says, when does man cease to identify himself by only his name and his physical body? So this is the crux of the Yoga Sutras. So this is what Patanjali is saying as well, that man's suffering, the human condition, comes because man is confused. Man doesn't understand. Man thinks that man's eternal soul is in the identity of his body, when the identity of his body, the nature of his body, is simply just a temporary expression of the soul, and the soul is something that's entirely different. And because the soul dies, because the body dies, it's not real. The soul is what's real, and it's eternal. And so that's what Thoth is bringing up here. It is only in the spirit, mind, or subconscious that man creates those things which he desires. So in the spirit, mind, conscious, our subconscious thought, or as L. Ron Hubbard would say, the reactive mind, which again is not an L. Ron Hubbard creation to the Scientologists that happen to be listening. That's in the Upanishad, it's in the old text. It's that subconscious reactive mind and the subconscious that things are created. Right? Expand your vision to express the divinity that you are. Shishat contributes her wisdom. Trying to create only from the physical realm will not get you where you're longing to go. Those things created with light and power are from within, and they are things beyond mere physical. So we're talking about the unseen world versus the seen world. So that Purusha, the spirit, when we are creating our bodies, because we know that our souls, it's the dance of the Shiva and the Shakti, right? Even though the body and the soul are separate, and the body is a temporary experience of the soul, the two have to exist together. And in the next incarnation, again, a new tango with the same soul, different Shakti, but the Shakti that's created by the soul. So they have to exist together. But the creation of these things isn't coming from the physical realm. It's coming from the unseen realm of the spirit. I hope that makes sense. So that goes back into like that fire is inside of you is what's creating things. It's not your... Well,
it's really, it's like that whole magnetic energy. Everything in life is energy, right?
Right, absolutely.
So, and everyone is energy. So your thoughts, your ancestry, your karma, your emotions all create a frequency, right? Which radiates out of you. And that's where we talk about that whole law of correspondence or the law of attraction. So then what are you know, whatever you're putting out is what you therefore bringing back to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it also, I know, even if we look at this in more like scientific terms of the psychology or the science of the mind, if you go through a lot of trauma studies, and this makes sense to us in the spiritual world, but you know, you will see somebody. So if you have a trauma in your life, so for me, I spent many years in and out of abusive relationships in my 20s and early 30s. It just was a pattern. I was the common denominator. Did I want to be in abusive relationships? Well, no, I didn't. But I kept manifesting them, creating them for myself, calling them in because there was something in me that wasn't healed and it needed that trigger to heal it. Now, what trauma will tell you is that the experience of the mind is not really feeling positive or negative. It's just an experience of karma. And so it is calling, the science of the mind is telling, I hope that I'm trying to say this in like layman's non-scientific terms. It is calling in these experiences until you are able to heal yourself. So you're finally able, so you're triggering your own healing by having these repetitive things happen to you. And it doesn't have to be the extreme of an abusive relationship. That's just an example. It could just be little things that keep happening over and over again. Your mind is literally...
The thing is, let's say it is an abusive relationship. That is the situation with a lot of people. And if you've attracted an abusive relationship into your space, then there's parts of yourself around abuse, self-abuse, self-flagellation, self-deprivation, you know, all of that sort of stuff that need to be healed. So again, all that takes is to then connect to that divine spark, know that you are it and that this has just been your experience, and immediately just that realization and that recognition dissolves that. And that's the beauty of all the time. Spiritual intelligence, awareness, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is the most powerful frequency. That alignment with the divine, with God, with your creator, with source, whatever you choose to call it. That is the most powerful. And it's so beautiful when you can realize that every person in this abusive life is showing you how you are not treating yourself well, how you are not showing up for yourself. How often do you expect people to be on time and show up for you, yet you always procrastinate exercising. You always procrastinate spiritual practice. You're always procrastinating taking the dog for a walk, whatever. You keep doing that to yourself and get so mad when someone else does that to you. And that would then be, for example, you say, well, they're abandoning me. I'm going, well, are you abandoning you?
Yeah.
It all comes back to how you treat yourself, how you recognize and understand who you are in this beautiful universe, multiverse, whatever, and how important you are to God and the creator source. That's it.
Yeah, it all starts with you. You are the ricochet. You are, I mean, that is the, the second sutra of the yoga sutras. Second sutra, the first pada, is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So chittam is the mind stuff. Vritti is like when you drop a pebble into a pond and it ricochets waves. So that's the thoughts coming out, the vibrational thoughts coming out of the mind. Nirodha is nothingness. So it's basically, since we can't get rid of our thoughts, it's basically trying to understand them. And that's what Shanti's saying. That's what Thoth is saying. Like even the subconscious thoughts, even understanding the patterns. If you're not aware of your subconscious thoughts, then you can look around at your environment and what's mirroring you to understand your subconscious thoughts, because that's what's creating it. And so that's very profound. It's very, and that's why we say, like, even with the world situation we have going on with the controllers and their religious beliefs, we'll just say it that way, we're never going to be able to heal that and stop that until we heal ourselves. Because even though none of us are out there doing those nasty things to little kids, we're still doing nasty things to ourselves. And so it's snowballing itself. And so if we start with ourselves, that's why we're doing shadow work challenges. If then we start with ourselves, then we can start to heal our own vibrational frequency, which then will stop then we won't need that mirror to show us the nastiness. I hope that makes sense. I hope, again, I want to say that doesn't mean we're not doing these things that they're doing. Very, very few people are actually that psychotic to do what they're doing.
But ignorance, you see, the ignorance, it's that where the saying goes that where bad things happen when good people or good men remain silent.
Yes.
Do nothing. And unfortunately, that's what happens. Our ignorance around what's going on and what to look for and et cetera, has unconsciously or subconsciously created the world we live in. And I mean, here's something, and I've said this before, and I know it does not make me popular, but guys, you know by now, I'm not here to win popularity stakes. I'm just here to say it the way I believe it. If you are eating meat from a supermarket, anything where you buying meat from somewhere, you are participating in the biggest daily blood sacrifice on this planet.
Yep.
That is the slaughterhouse industry. Now, we can con ourselves and fool ourselves into believing we need to eat all of these animals. Until such time that we stop being ignorant to what we are actually participating in, they will not stop doing this to our children. Because if you think that what is veal? Okay, and I know in South Africa, veal is it's a baby cow that has to be slaughtered within 24 hours. So you are eating a baby. You are murdering a baby because you like tender meat. What is baby chicken? What is suckling pork? What is lamb? These are baby animals. So my point is, you cannot, and I want to say this as an animal lover and as an animal whisperer, if we think that animals do not know and do not feel and do not understand what is going on, think again. Their trauma and their emotional anxiety, I don't say it's exactly as a human's, I can't say that, but it is incredibly severe for them. The anxiety,
it's alive. Their trauma, their anxiety is very much alive.
And it creates energy, guys. Think about what the demonic energy forces do. Oh, fear, adrenaline, right? And what happens? All these nasty energy vampires feed off that. That blood that is tapped into wherever it's alive. You know that the thing that links spirit and physical and that gives us life after the spark is the blood, right? Which is why blood is so important for them. Blood is what links the physical to the spiritual.
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you, I watched an interview with a woman was African lady, Africa's highest Luciferian witch in Africa. And she will tell you how she was taken through her initiation through these gates of hell, literally, where pools of blood are there. And she says it's the first time she understood that blood was alive, because that was the blood of the suffering. It was crying out. It was in pain. It was pain. And that's what these demonics would feed off.
Yeah.
So life is spiritual. It's never forget that. It's spiritual first, and then it becomes physical. So am I saying everyone who eats meat is evil? No, I'm saying be conscious. And if you do want to participate in eating the flesh of another living being, you've got to do it very, very differently than buying it from the supermarket, because that's the easiest way, because you are participating in the biggest blood sacrifice ritual every single day. And I'm sorry to say that, guys, but that is the truth. And if you can sit back and think about what I'm saying without reacting to what I'm saying, let it sit with you. Think about these animals going into the slaughterhouse. Think about the process that they have to go through. Think about the lack of gratitude that human beings have when it's just plowed into your face. Children don't even know that chocolate milk doesn't come from a brown cow, or that brown cows don't give chocolate milk. You know what I'm saying? There's no connection to your food. There's no understanding of what went on before that animal landed up on your plate. We can't think that one layer of living on earth is important and not the other.
Yeah.
We can't. And that's
I just want to answer this. I just want to answer Sally, who says, what about animals eating animals and fish eating fish and cats eating cats? We're not talking about eating meat. We're talking about mass slaughtering houses. When you buy your meat at a grocery house, thousands and thousands of animals get slaughtered at the same time. That is a blood sacrifice. It's not your grandpa killing the old cow for the year's meat. It's not the same. It's not about eating meat. It's about knowing where it comes from, because they are being mass slaughtered. Yeah. It is a sacrifice. It's total sacrifice. So it's about that.
Well, my
and again, sorry, Brice, carry on.
No, I was going to say too. If you read the Law of One, which is, I always suggest everyone read the Law of One, because it goes over this. It talks about this. As a human being, you don't have more awareness as far as consciousness, because all animals have consciousness, but you have more of a mental you have a higher level of complex thinking than animals do. And so we have the option as human beings to not, I'm a firm believer in vegetarian. We have a choice. Animals in the wild don't have that choice. And animals in the wild are not eating and killing other animals for shits and giggles. Fun. They're not torturing. Yeah. They're doing it for food, and that's it. And so there's a very different, you look at like the Native Americans, when they would hunt meat, they would pray over the meat. There was a ritual involved, thanking the animal for sacrificing its life. They used every part of the animal, so nothing was wasted. And they were very grateful. It wasn't just a pair of leather pants they bought and then like gave to Goodwill. They were very grateful. But again, at this point in our life, we have, my teacher in India. So if you go to India is 80% vegetarian. So all this crap about you needing it for your nutrition is bullshit, because Indians live longer than we do by far. And most of them have never touched meat in their life. And my teacher in India will talk a lot about dairy in conferences. Now, dairy in places like the United States, probably some in South Africa and Europe, is awful because of what they're doing to the animals to get massive amounts of dairy. And my teacher has talked about this, whereas in India, you actually see people outside milking their cows by hand. And so there's a very different
sharing.
It's very, yes.
It's
and
sharing.
These cows are very well taken care of. Trust me, they get to roam around the towns for free. They all have bindis on their head. They're very much taken care of. And dairy in India tastes better than dairy does, because there's a difference. And my thing with animals too, for what Shanti was saying with like slaughterhouses, if you can't handle going to a slaughterhouse and watching what happens, then why are you eating the product of that slaughterhouse? There's a big disconnect when it comes to that. And I will say, because our friend Catherine Edwards, she's a vegan, vegetarian like we are, but she has a great diet for dogs that I have my dog on, and it's raw meat, raw vegetables. But when we purchase meat for my dog, who's a street dog from India, we go to a farmer's market, and we know where it's coming from. We don't just go to Kroger the supermarket down the street and just buy a slab of meat. We actually go to a specific place because we know that it was done humanely. And but we ourselves don't participate in the eating of that, because we can listen. I've been a vegetarian since I was 14 years old, and I'll be 40 on February 4th. And I feel like my health is way better than most people my age. And I think a lot of it does come from the fact that I haven't had meat. And there is blood. You are eating blood, and let's look at that too. We talked about, if we're talking about the spirit of life and blood, both Shanti and I have the same blood type. We're both O negative. But if you look at both of our blood, If you took our blood and looked at the DNA in it, it would bring about two completely different genetic beings. That's how powerful the blood is. So just because Shanti and I have O negative blood, it just means that we don't have any. Neither one of us have any of the A or the B or the rhesus factor, right? So my mind's gone blank on what the A and the B are called. But as far as Shanti's blood is going to give Shanti's DNA expression, and my blood's going to give mine. So they're still different. And that's how special we are. That's how special the soul is in creating the body. And so it does, animals do have a soul and a spirit about them. You look into the eyes of your dog or your cat, or you look into the eyes of a cow or a horse. Horses are unbelievable. You know, I just was reading in the Hathor material where he talks about using the Tom Kenyon, who wrote the Hathor material. He talks about using the same mental stimulant for humans to curb anxiety. He used it on a horse too, and it worked on the horse as well.
Yeah. Amazing.
So how different really are we when it comes to fear, anxiety? I know when my dog's afraid. I know when my dog gets really afraid if it does get a little bit cold. He wants to leave because he's from South India. So I know when he's afraid. You know, South Indian dogs, there's monsoon season. Most of the Indian dogs who are adopted into, like my dog came over to America as a puppy. He had never experienced monsoon season. But if it rains hard, he gets scared, because his DNA carries that memory of fear, of needing to protect himself from the monsoons of India. So it is very, and I know it's hard, and we're not, you know, you got to do your own, you got to make your own choices, but it is something to consider when you think about the manifestation of the macro and the micro. It is very much something to consider. Yahshua ben Yosef, the person they call Jesus in the missing books of the Bible, he is a big on vegetarianism, huge. The story where he in the edited Bible, the fake Bible that we have in our churches, the Sermon on the Mount, where he multiplies the fish and the bread. Well, in the missing Gospels, it's not fish, it's grapes. It's grapes and bread. So all these other missing Gospels are saying grapes and bread, but the one that's been edited multiple times says fish and bread. Well, then you got to wind it back. Why would they change it to fish and bread and not grapes and bread? Why would Constantine, the Satanist, who was an open Satanist, as was King James, make sure it said fish and bread? Because fish are living animals, and they are pushing the consumption of living animals, because believe it or not, the controllers do know this. They know what they're doing, and they don't want us to figure it out. So it's just something to think about, because you have that power to make that decision. You know, you have that power to course correct. And there is more protein in vegetables than there is in meat. That's another lie they tell you. If you look at the protein consumption of vegetables, there's more in vegetables than meat. I don't eat soy. Absolutely. I just eat vegetables and beans and rice, and I'm fine. I have a normal period cycle. I'm totally healthy. So anyway, so we have a little bit left of this one. All things that were created in the physical form were first vision in the mind and spirit, yet physical forms are required to sustain life. Seek first your inner guidance, and bright will be the path before you, right? And that's something we've lost. I know my friend Tamara talks about listening to your gut a lot. We could have lost. And I know for women, they like to tell, because women are, the feminine energy is the intuitive arts, right? And they tell women all the time that women are crazy. Oh, you're just hormonal. Are you on your period? You know, when you're literally, no, you have these, you know, my friend Tamara in Australia has a great thing. People ask her, what's the difference between fear and my gut intuition? And she says, it's simple. Fear makes sense. Your gut intuition often doesn't make sense. That's the difference. But if we start leaning onto that and understanding that there's that's one thing I have a problem with when it comes to all religions, actually, is this idea of prophets. This idea that there is somebody that has a better ear to God than you. That is simply not true. You are your own prophet. You have that divine connection to God, and it comes through your gut intuition. Everybody has that. Everybody has that. There's no special person who's been anointed to have a greater conversation with God than you. No. And so start leaning on that, on your own guidance. That's what she's saying here. Seek first your inner guidance, and bright will be the path before you. You will find it far easier to attain all your goals by starting from an unconscious level. heeding the callings of that bright flame in your heart. That makes sense to me, because there have been things in my life that I've wanted to do that I didn't quite understand, but I just started doing them and they snowballed into something that was like, oh, yes, this is it. This is what I was looking for. And you just kind of keep following that like breadcrumb, right? That bread trail. Did we lose Shanti?
Yeah, no, she's still here in the back room.
Okay,
but yeah,
cool.
it's following your intuition, following that inner spark, that intuition, that inner guidance. It's like, although we came here to experience the illusion of separateness,
we aren't separate.
And the truth still remains that God never left us, because
Never.
we are that spark of eternal life, which is God.
Yeah.
And if we can remember that truth, then we can start unraveling the layers we put around it easier, and shine our light again. And that's also, it's not like our light's never shining. It's just that we've put all these layers around it. It's like it's still shining. We just need to remember.
And that's what God said in the very beginning, that when you go on the other side of the veil and you see human life, you see it as fire. Some people have a brighter fire than others. Some of the fire is dimmer, but it doesn't mean the light's not the same. It's just where that consciousness is and understanding its own light. And that's so true. And I want people to understand that. I want to like shake people and like not shake them, but like hug them and be like, God never left you. Like that's one of the biggest lies that I feel, in my opinion, the church has told. You don't have to invite the Holy Spirit into you. You don't have to invite that. It never left you. If you had Shanti, you have a child. If you gave birth to a child, would you then kick your baby out and say, you only come back and when you ask me to come back? Like, would you ever do that to your baby, your kid? No. So why would God do that to us? God didn't create us. Then
Probably the wrong person. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
like maybe a teenager. Maybe when they're a teenager, you're like, you come back when you go.
Yeah, it's like my sister used to say, and I'm really just kidding, guys. It's like my sister used to say, when your baby is so small and so cute, all you want to do is gobble him up. When they get to 16, you wish you had.
I said so many of my friends, like after they gave birth to their first child, and the nurses would just like hand them the baby, and they'd be going home and they'd be holding this baby like, what do I do? Wait, you're sending me home with this? Like, I'm supposed to keep this alive? Like, what's happening? But yeah,
it's such a beautiful thing. It's such a natural thing, actually. The minute you hold it, it's like it fits there. And you look at this little face staring back at you, and it's like unbelievable. It's like unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I remember that.
I'm not a parent. I'm an aunt. And I know with my nephew and my nieces, I can't get enough of them. I think they're the coolest little people that, I mean, my youngest niece is a year and a half, and she is just this chubby cherub. Like, she just has the whitest hair, and she just runs around. She doesn't stop. And she just goes, baby, baby. Like, she can only say a few words. But I cannot get enough of them. I would give hands down, without hesitation, would give my life for those children. The first time I held my nephew, he was the kid that made me an aunt. The first time I held him, I saw him being born. The first time I held him, I thought, oh, this is what love is like. This little wrinkly thing that looks like Winston Churchill, because all babies look like Winston Churchill, that just came out of my sister's hoo-ha. Like, I would absolutely lay my life down for this sucker. So there's no way I would just kick my nephew and my nieces outside and just be like, now you only come back when you can ask, speak for yourself to come in. No, that's ridiculous. God has always been with us. The minute the sperm hits the egg, there's a spark of life. That's the spark of life Thoth is talking about. It's never left you. It's always been there. Don't let someone convince your mind and put you into bondage that it's not there, that you have to earn your spot with your creator. That's ridiculous.
Your job is not to seek love. Your job is to seek the blockages that you've created between you and love, and then dissolve those. That's it. So just dissolve Exactly.
You are that love, and that's the journey. And so I just want, if that's one thing I really, and it's not just Christianity that does that. It's a lot of religions that do that make you separate from God, and they put people in between you and God and say, well, these people are like the prophets. No, you're your own prophet. You are your own prophet. You are it. You are
your guru. The guru is within.
You are the transmutation of dark to light. So
you don't need the one hugging Klaus Schwab. What's the one? The guru hugging Klaus Schwab, the one with the big thing on his head.
Oh, is that Yogi Bhajan? I can't stand Yogi Bhajan, but that's a story for a different day.
It's not Bhajan. It's that other one, the one that's in with the. Is it something Ananda? He's always there, and he's always in with a New World Order. Yeah. That one, I can't.
I don't know. I don't. I mean, all I know is I've been studying, like I said, I've been looking into like Scientology and all these cults and like trying to figure out what's the difference between a good teacher and a cult leader. And I found very specific differences. Good teachers have boundaries and will not try to control your life outside of just teaching you the information. Like my teacher in India, he does not give a shit like who you're dating, who you're boinking. He does not give a shit like what you're doing outside of yoga. As long as you're doing your work in the classroom, that's it. And that's actually a really good thing because that shows you he's not trying to control you. You know, he's not trying. He's just there to teach you, and that's it. You know, and that's healthy. Is he doesn't know where we live in India. We have to find our own apartments. Like that's healthy because we have a separation. He won't let any students into his house. Like it's just very separate, and I respect that about him because that does keep it very clear that this is not a freaking cult. You know, this is a school, and that's it. You know. And when you go, when you go to him for questions, he doesn't tell you what to do. He just speaks to you in metaphors. That's it. You have to figure out what to do. He just kind of helps you find answer your own questions, basically. So anyway, but I guess it's been like an hour. So the never-ending saga of not to be an asshole.
We will continue again, and we will have the emerald tablets as our main point of conversation, but clearly not the only point of conversation in these chats, which we're always very happy about. But before we say farewell, wait, I have got a new book for this year already, you see, so I was trying to find it now. So on Wednesday, please tune into Solutions. So Brice and I are going to be talking about our 60-day challenge Brice is hosting coming up in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. So on Solutions with Aquarius rising on Wednesday, we're going to be talking about fasting because I, of course, bringing in the fasting. So we're going to talk about fasting and how to prepare yourself for that. And then, of course, as well, the 3-week Surya Namaskar challenge, the sun salutation challenge. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that and what that's going to be about. Very exciting. That's the 36-day, listen to me, the 60-day shadow work challenge, sun salutation. So along with that, there we go. So along with that, we've got and of course, we are doing from next Wednesday, not this Wednesday, the next one. We're going to be delving into the Sophia Code, everybody. So those of you who want to join, please get a copy. Brice, can you download a PDF of that if people want to?
No, I don't think so. It's very easy if you live in the United States. I know South Africa, it's a little difficult to get some stuff, but if you live in the United States or Canada or Europe or Australia, I think you can very easily get it off of Amazon. I covered this on my channel last year, and it's been one of my most favorite. This is one of my most favorite books, and it is so. I was telling them before we started filming, I literally cried through almost every single key code. Get you some waterproof mascara, get you some waterproof eyeliner, because it's very touching. And I would love if anybody knows how to get in touch with the woman who channeled this book. She is like our friend Jessie Zaboter. She's a survivor of SRA of this group, and she talks about it at the beginning of the book. I did not know that when I bought this book, so I thought it was incredible that she's coming from this from a perspective that we are aware of what's going on in the world. And she, in this nefarious group of people, of controllers, her ability to channel was used, and then she came out and healed herself, and she's channeling for the good now to help heal people. And so this is a very healing book. I know everybody who reads the Sophia Code just loves it, and your life is changed by it. So yeah, if you can't afford to get a book copy, we're going to go through it here. I also have readings on my channel, but I really highly suggest getting your own copy as well.
That's exciting. I'm looking forward to that, and we'll keep you updated with those. And I have to say, I love you guys in the chats. Always so diverse, stuff like that. Love it. Okay, guys and girls.
Was Angie trying to make guacamole without her thumbs? I read that little comment. Angie from the blue people. She's trying to do it.
Try to make guacamole without thumbs.
Well, use your thumbs. That's the beautiful thing about being a human. You got thumbs.
You just have pinches. Okay. All right, guys. So look forward to seeing you on Wednesday again. Join us on Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. As I said, we're going to talk about the fasting. We're going to talk about the Surya Namaskar. We're going to talk about lots of other things. As you know, we just talk about everything. We just talk about everything and a whole lot of other things, no doubt. And still more after that. And on that note, I think...
Can I answer one question quickly? No, somebody asked that Thoth was a god. No, Thoth was never a god. That was something that was propaganda that was started, but Thoth does not call himself a god. We have to remember when we're looking at this type of information, we have to hear it from the horse's mouth. Thoth calls himself a teacher and a servant of mankind. He does not call himself a god at all.
Let's just remember as well, you know, guys, what we hear is we expose and we understand we've been lied to a lot. So there's a lot of information that's been hidden from us that we're bringing up to the fore. So does that mean it is gospel every single thing that we bring out? Maybe not. But what it is, it's giving you food for thought, and it's giving you some understanding on what's going out there. And as we say, the creator creates, the Lucy's, what's the word I always use? Emulate. So they will take what is there and they will turn it and they will invert it. But so they will say that Thoth was a god. But when you're talking about the real Thoth, remember, there's always two sides. Story, guys. This is a planet of polarization.
And you just have to read the tablets yourself to see his information is mirroring what Yahshua taught as well, what you call Jesus taught. It's mirroring. There's nothing in his teaching that's forcing you to worship him. It's all about loving each other, helping each other, not gossiping. So you have to also look at the evidence. Don't just go what people are telling you, because a lot of this is propaganda. That's not true. And so look at the evidence. You don't need anybody else to tell you whether Thoth was good or bad. You just read the Emerald Tablets for yourself and make that decision.
Absolutely. Explore. You know, on this channel, we are open-minded. Mm-hmm. We explore. We talk about topics that most people don't want to talk about. We bring it to the fore. Well, when I say nothing is taboo, of course, we do have our boundaries, but we like to be controversial, bring up topics that others, give you guys some food for thought, some information to go and play with, expand our consciousness. That's what we do here. So enjoy. Okay, everybody. God bless you all. Take good care of yourselves. See you on Wednesday. Mwah. Like, share, subscribe, all lovely things. Be cool, be kind, be awesome. See you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.